Kia ora. My name is Ursula, and this is my sign name. I'm a teacher of the deaf, and I also teach NZSL at high school level. I work for Ko Takareo, which is New Zealand's only national deaf education school. This presentation is a snapshot of part of my Master's Action Research in 2024 with my online NZSL class. I've been looking at how to enhance interactive learning and build a social language learning community in online NCEA NZSL classes. This project is based on my high school teaching. NCEA NZSL is taught in the last 3 years, from year 11 through year 13. It's part of the Learning Languages curriculum and provides a pathway to university. My action research focused on teaching NCEA NZSL at Level 1, which has recently been updated as part of the curriculum refresh that is happening in New Zealand education at the moment. The resources developed from this project are more sustainable and can continue to be used. In this project, I tried using a teaching approach I have never used before. Flipped learning. I wanted to see how flipped learning would impact the development of social presence in my online classes. These photos show my 2 classes, and they are shared with consent. I had 1 class in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, 3 times a week, for 1 hour each, plus 1 flipped learning session per week, with a total of 14 students involved in the research. A key challenge this project explored was finding best practices for moving from face-to-face to online teaching, something that's grown rapidly since COVID in 2020. We're seeing more deaf, hard of hearing, and hearing students who want access to signing environments. They want NZSL as part of their NCEA pathway. I used a mixed methods approach, collecting both qualitative and quantitative data. There were 2 6-week iterations, with changes made between them based on the data collected. This project was guided by the Community of Inquiry framework by Garrison, Anderson and Archer, 1999. This framework helps researchers understand how social, teaching, and cognitive presence work together to create successful online learning environments. The hardest presence to achieve online is usually social presence, or the interaction between students. This is particularly important for deaf and hard of hearing students, who benefit from the development of community and belonging. Many have limited exposure to the language, to deaf peers, to role models like deaf teachers, like myself, and to the broader deaf community. NZSL is an official language of New Zealand, but it's also a threatened language. There are low numbers of deaf students in deaf units, and larger numbers of deaf students are in the local mainstream schools, so their access to language, culture, and community is limited. Next, we'll look at what the data showed about the impact of flipped learning on developing social presence. I adapted the Community of Inquiry survey from Rubin 2013 for this research. The survey had 34 statements, with 10 to 12 of them linked specifically to social, teaching, and cognitive presence. Students completed the same survey 3 times, before iteration 1, after iteration 1, and after iteration 2, using a Likert scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree. The table here shows that before iteration 1, there was no flipped learning for 10 weeks. Then we introduced flipped learning iteration 1, adapted our approach based on the data, feedback and observations, and continued into iteration 2. As you can see, teacher presence decreased, while social presence slowly increased. With flipped learning, low-level direct instruction, like vocabulary and grammar, was covered beforehand, allowing class time to focus on student-to-student interaction, active learning of NZSL, and building relationships. In Zoom, synchronous interactions were mostly student-to-student, while asynchronous interactions were more student-to-teacher or student-to-content in the learning management system. This research focused on student-to-student interaction in synchronous settings. This graph shows the frequency, quality, and duration of interactions during iteration 1. Students recorded their breakout room interactions in iteration 1. I received over 190 recordings from the 14 students and analysed a sample of 90 videos, which included both students who had completed the flipped learning and those who hadn't. The quality score here comes from the NCEA assessment table, which requires 4 elements to meet NCEA assessment criteria: ideas, information, opinions, and use of tenses. The duration is shown in minutes. The spoken language assessment standard sets a benchmark at about 2 minutes. Looking at the graph, to achieve the quality score of 4, students needed between 2 and 4.5 minutes, indicating that NZSL requires more interaction time compared to spoken language. Frequency is also important because the quality of interactions improves with practice and reflection on recording. Flipped learning created more time for these interactions. Further analysis looked at inconsistencies in discourse and interactions, and how flipped learning impacted them. Inconsistencies were rated from low 1 to high 3, following the NCEA assessment table. We saw differences in the average rate of inconsistencies between interactions where flipped learning was completed and where it wasn't. The types of inconsistencies included regional variations, different signs for the same word depending on location, home signs, incorrect contextual signs, often different from the NZSL dictionary, fingerspelling instead of using the sign, long pauses or simply not understanding each other or a topic, which was the flipped learning topic. Flipped learning videos provided the high-frequency vocabulary, the correct contextual signs, and consistent signs for the class topic. This was reinforced through review activities like Kahoots and in-class drills. Teacher observations and student feedback. Flipped learning is a skill that teachers need to teach their students. It doesn't just happen automatically. It supports the development of self-regulated learning, as described by Zimmerman in 2002. This requires routines, time limits, clear purposes, and a similar style each week to build student expectations, motivation, and participation. This graph shows high motivation from students, but it took 9 weeks to reach 100% participation, and even then, participation dropped again the following week. These analyses came from Nearpod, a great digital tool for tracking student behaviour and engagement, and adapting content using universal design for learning. Student feedback from Nearpod polls showed that 70% felt flipped learning prepared them for class activities. Finally, I'd like to thank my sponsors and supporters for this research and for helping me to get to the ICED conference. See the slide for the logos. If you'd like more information, please feel free to contact me by email. Thank you so much for watching.